bright allies and sisters and divinity, I ask your guidance for what is appropriate for me. I ask your blessings upon this day. I ask to make known my true will's way.
And so, the goddess Freya awoke one morning feeling restless. She decided to go out into the world to see if there was anything interesting to see. Rather than drive her chariot pulled by two beautiful wildcats, instead, she donned her shimmering falcon feathered cloak and promptly transformed into a falcon. Freya flew far and wide across many different lands, desert sands, beautiful green rolling hills, snow-capped mountains. However, nothing piqued her interest. She looked far and wide until her wings were growing tired, and just below there was a clearing in a forest. Smoke curled up with the smell of cooking food. Freya realized she was also very hungry. As the falcon descended, a man was stirring a pot of stew. And as it happened, he was a man of the gods. Ifrik was his name, and he doled out a bowl of stew as an offering to the gods. Freya landed in the clearing, transforming into a gorgeous young woman right before Ifrik's eyes. Seating herself on the other side of the fire, she picked up the bowl of stew and began to eat. Now, Ifrik could not believe what he'd been seeing happen right in front of him. All he could do was also sit and eat his stew. They eat in silence until both their bowls were empty. Eventually, Ifrik said, "Fair goddess, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. I greet you with love and thanks." Freya finally spoke. "I thank you, Elphick. The stew was just what I needed. I would now like for you to regale me with a tale." The story begins with 4 dwarves, Alfric, Berling, Dvalin, and Grer, in the dwarf kingdom of Smartelf Helm. Out of the night sky a star fell to the ground. Steam came out of the hole in the snow where it had landed. The dwarves edged forward with caution, and they peered down the hole in the snow to see a lump of metal cooling. It was clearly too hot to pick up. Unfortunately, Dvalin had a pair of tongs at his belt. He slowly hitched forward and grabbed the metal with the tongs, hurried back inside. When they reached their forge, they placed the metal in a bucket of water, and as it cooled, it broke into 4 pieces, and at its heart, a shining jewel. It was bright, with many-coloured light, and most certainly from another place far above Asgard. As they admired this jewel, they each knew this was for a beautiful goddess to wear. Each took a piece of this strange metal and began to fashion a torque. This was grueling hot work. It took a year and a day, but finally the jewel was placed at the centre of the torque. It was complete. The metal was the hardest element they had ever worked, and glowed like sunlight. The jewel shone out at its centre like a moonbeam. Beholding the torque, there was no doubt this was a magical object. They all agreed that this indeed was destined for a powerful goddess. But which one? And why? At this point, Elphick finished this tale, as he was unaware if this talk had been claimed or remained with the dwarves. He assured the goddess in front of him that this tale was a truth, and indeed the talk existed. It was a magical, powerful, beautiful object, worthy of Freya herself, he insisted. Freya returned to her hall. Unfortunately, she could not get the tale of the talk from her mind. Sleep was hard to come by, and even in the waking hours she was interrupted by dreams of the talk. On the 3rd day there rose a clear dawn, and she decided to go in search of this magical talk. Again she took the form of the falcon and flew high in the mountains of the dwarf kingdom of Svartalfheim. One night she flew over a mountain, and there was a beautiful glow coming from one of the entrances. Flying closer and closer, she saw that this was no ordinary light. This was magic. Landing and transforming, the goddess entered the opening. Indeed, this light was for nothing natural. This light. There were 4 dwarves in a heated discussion. Upon her entrance, the dwarves fell silent. As with the traveller Elphick, they had never seen a woman so beautiful. Freya introduced herself. The dwarves immediately took off their hats and bowed. Could this be the one the talk was meant for? Now, we have to remember that bartering with a dwarf is never easy. Even for a goddess. They invited her to the table with offerings of food and drink. The haggling began in earnest. She offered all the gold and jewellery they could want. Hours passed, Dawn was breaking as they finally came to an agreement. All they really wanted for the talk was for her to lay a night with each of the dwarfs. On the first night, she found out that the talk had whispered its name, Brísingamen, to the dwarf. Using its name would harness its power and tie it to her. On the second night, Freya learned that with the talk she would be able to enhance the power of foresight. On the third night, the dwarf revealed that she would have command of the 4 elements. On the fourth night, the last dwarf told her to keep all these new abilities to herself, otherwise, in the wrong hand, devastation could follow. Having paid the price and learned of the talk's powers, she left with a kiss for each dwarf and returned to Asgard. This is the tale of how Freya ended up possessing the Brísingamen, but little did she know that Loki had been spying on her. He reported all back to Odin to try and get in his good graces. However, although Loki had seen all, he had not heard anything. Loki and the Brísingamen is a tale for another time.